he basically gave everything to Vladimir, everything. And I mean everything. He gave him more than I thought he would give him. And all of that was not enough, it seems, because while this ceasefire negotiation has taken place, Vladimir Putin last night bombs Kyiv, which is insane. Basically saying, I hold the cards, okay? It's not Zelensky that holds the cards, and it's not Trump that holds the cards. I hold the cards. We're moving on to war, more war, this time in Ukraine. Details emerge on the reported U.S. peace proposal. The United States is making a take it or leave it final offer style scheme here, and let's take a look.
It is unconfirmed. It's only what's been briefed out to some of the press, and undoubtedly it will be subject to quite a lot of pressures on all sides. But as far as we can tell, this is what's being said, that within the whole battlefield there'll be a freezing, more or less, where the front lines now are. So the famous front line that we've got used to, this big semicircle, will more or less freeze. And that means that the Russians would have to give up the ambition to have the whole of the four areas that they took, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson. In September 2022, they annexed them all. They just declared that they were all Russian, even though they only then had 2/3 of them. And they still don't have more than about 4/5 of them. And indeed, in Kherson, they took the whole of Kherson itself originally and then were kicked out of there in the autumn of 2022. So the Russians would have to accept that they're not going to get, under these proposals, everything that they claimed. The Ukrainians would have to accept that the whole of Crimea that was taken in 2014 in the first Russian invasion would be de jure given to Russia, that the Russians would be recognized as having control of Crimea. Now, that's something that the Americans may say will give you formal control.
Ukraine is getting teary-eyed, right? Oh, 100%. Look, there were numerous exit ramps here where Ukraine had significantly more leverage, whether it be trying to manage the situation by abiding by the Minsk agreements. Some will say Russia played a role in the violation of the Minsk agreements as well, and there is truth to this. That is the best path forward, right? No conflict. Conceding to Russian demands that DPR and LPR are still within Ukrainian territory, but at least have a semblance of autonomy. And then the other exit ramp, obviously, was the Antalya 15-point plan that Zelensky was on board with initially. De jure means officially. De facto means not officially, not legally, but functionally. De jure means official recognition. And in this process, they had significantly more leverage when they had been able to successfully push back Russian forces from Kyiv. They had a lot more leverage, and Russia controlled a lot less territory at this point. That would have been another exit ramp, and I said over and over again at that time, like, this is the opportunity. This is great. They should take it. And everyone said, you can't do appeasement. You love Adolf Hitler. And in that process, almost 100,000 plus troops were wounded so severely or killed that there was no more battle to be fought. And I said this recently as well when Trump came into office and said he's going to end this process, that there's only two ways out of this. You either Ukraine continues the war, and now you have to make up the ranks, because there are still plenty of Ukrainian men that are evading the authorities and trying not to get forcibly conscripted. And you have a shit ton of Ukrainian men that are eligible for the draft, that are in the Western world right now, that have temporary protected status, that are refugees. Either you literally forcibly put every Ukrainian man that lives in the United States of America, that lives in Poland, that lives in the rest of Europe on a plane and ship them to Ukraine, and then the Ukrainian government forcibly drafts them into war, into defending Ukrainian territory, or you don't have enough men to fill the ranks and to continue mounting a defense or even push back the Russian forces from the territory that they've acquired and hardened their positions in. So that's the issue. And that is already a complicated process in and of itself. It's an inhumane process in and of itself. If they don't do that, then they have to make territorial concessions. So when Trump says, Ukraine, you don't have any of the cards, they're not wrong. Because if Ukraine still had a reasonable number of men that could continue pushing Russian forces militarily out of their ranks, out of their territory, then Trump would continue arming Ukraine. Obviously, Donald Trump, on top of that, has a soft spot for Vladimir Putin. That much is clear. That certainly plays some role here in the way that he's communicated the crisis in front of us. Yeah, he hates Zelensky. He doesn't like Ukraine. He thinks Ukraine is lib shit, and he likes Vladimir Putin. That's for sure. So all of that definitely plays a role in the way that he's talking about Ukraine and Russia, which has been insane in and of itself. But obviously, beyond that, they are in a bind. Ukraine is stuck. They simply do not have enough manpower. They do not have enough members in the armed forces at this point. So what do? There's another option. A third option is to lower the age of conscription and then effectively destroy the next generation. And by force, start bringing in 18-year-olds into the armed forces. That would be terrifying. And it would completely destroy Ukraine's future, what remains of Ukraine. There's also the other scary part of the story, which is what if Russia recovers and then rearms, re-ups, and then invades further? That is also a very real fear for Ukrainians.
Smile.
J.D. Vance on a trip to India was talking up a U.S. proposal involving freezing the front lines and a land swap, but also more than just a hint of looming exasperation.
We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process.
The Financial Times and other...
Art of the deal all around, by the way. Art of the deal with China, demanding that China call Trump immediately and say, I'm so sorry for participating in the global economy schemes that you have designed where we became a manufacturing hub for the entire planet. And you, in exchange for that, gave the dollar tremendous purchasing power. We're so sorry for succeeding. The art of the deal here is if constantly yelling at Zelensky, being like, Zel Disney, he's got no cards. Trump says we are very close to a deal on Ukraine, but blames Zelensky for holding it up by refusing to acknowledge Russia's annexation of Crimea. He appears to suggest Crimea is a part of whatever deal U.S. may have made. U.S. may have already agreed with Russia. I don't understand. If the annexed territories are going to be recognized, why the f wouldn't he recognize Crimea? Oh, the 4 oblasts are not being recognized. Okay. But it's still going to be in Russia's hands, no? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is boasting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There is nothing to talk about here. This statement is very harmful to peace negotiations with Russia, in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of President Barack Hussein Obama, and is not even a point of discussion. Nobody is asking Walt Disney to recognize Crimea as Russian territory, but if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a shot being fired? The area also houses, for many years before the Obama handover, major Russian submarine bases. He's not wrong. No, that's not. This part is not entirely incorrect. Anyway, yes, Sevastopol is a Russian Russian Navy base in Crimea before Russia's annexation of Crimea. You know, he's just being a dickhead. Anyway, Zelensky makes it so difficult. It's inflammatory statements like Zelensky's that makes it so difficult. How do you not see you come across like a pussy? By the way, when you do this, when you're like, oh, we're about to do a deal, which gives Russia everything and Ukraine nothing, and Zelensky is the one f***ing up the deal. Like Zelensky, whether you want to recognize it or not, Zelensky is your side. He is your proxy in this conversation. You can't just keep throwing your proxy under the bus. I think it's incredibly f***ed up that Trump, in an effort to like nip this shit in the bud, is obviously going to sell a bunch of Ukrainian assets over here to Russia and say, all right, it's Russia. What are you going to do about it? You know, they won, you lost, we lost, bye-bye, right? But also simultaneously shitting on Zelensky in the process and like taking away whatever remaining political power he has in the country and like chipping away. I guess, or maybe he's doing the same thing that he did with like Carney or whatever, or Polivier, where he just keeps on Zelensky and then maybe his approval rating goes up in Ukraine. I don't know. Maybe it's a art of the deal 5D chess move. Except it's such a stupid move because ironically enough, it will inevitably show the rest of the world that America is untrustworthy in broad daylight, in 4K. They're treating Ukraine like they do Kurdish militia forces in the Middle East, like identically, which is something I said in the beginning of Russia's invasion, and everyone yelled at me. Wait, what is this? Zelensky makes this difficult. He has nothing to boast about. The situation for Ukraine is dire. He can have peace or he can fight another 3 years before losing the whole country. I have nothing to do with Russia, but have much to do with wanting to save, on average, 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week who are dying for no reason whatsoever. The statement made by Zelensky today will do nothing but prolong the killing field. And nobody wants that. We are very close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done. I look forward to being able to help Ukraine and Russia get out of this complete and total mess that would have never have started if I were president. Yeah, the final offer for peace requires Ukraine to accept Russian occupation, de jure U.S. recognition and Russian control of Crimea, de facto recognition of Russia's occupation of nearly all of Luhansk Oblast, and the occupied portions of Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. A promise that Ukraine will not become a member of NATO. The text notes that Ukraine could become a part of the European Union. The lifting of sanctions imposed since 2014. Enhanced economic cooperation with the U.S., particularly in energy and industrial sectors. Okay, I misunderstood from the British man. I thought the British man said de jure U.S. recognition of all Russian-controlled territories. In the previous video, I guess that is wrong. He's saying de facto control over the rest of the territory, which is... it means like it's assumed that Russia controls those territories. It's just not in the writing that the annexation is officially recognized.
The Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister tweeted this today.
Ukraine is ready to negotiate, but not to surrender. Our people will not accept a frozen conflict disguised as peace. We will never recognize the occupation of Crimea.
It all comes as Trump...
Bro, I'm not gonna lie, it's more than I thought. It's more. Trump is giving Russia even more than I thought they would. Like, I thought there would be some concessions to give like at least some semblance of a W to Ukraine to make it seem like all of this death and destruction was worth it. It's nothing. There's two ways that this deal could have gone worse for Ukraine, and obviously the absolute worst would have been Ukraine has to give complete control to Russia. It's now Russian territory, and we're officially recognizing it. And I guess the second worst version would be if he said, oh, we're formally recognizing all annexed territory as Russian, as a part of the Russian Federation. This is the third worst scenario. De facto recognition of all annexed territory for under Russian control, and legal recognition of Russian-occupied Crimea as a part of Russian territory. It's like a Belarusification of Ukraine. It's insane. They're going to poison Zelensky if he goes and signs this. I'm not going to lie to you, chatter. I think Zelensky is done whether he signs this or not. Like, he's done no matter what. He's cooked.
Trump's top team of diplomats were a no-show at talks aimed at securing a...
He's also extra cooked because it's not like he can do the thing that like other governments or fascist leadership in the past, not saying Zelensky is, but fascist leaderships in the past, after being overthrown by popular revolution, will fly to Miami and live there, right? He can't even do that. He can't even escape to America. He could maybe escape to the UK, but it's not like Russia hasn't assassinated political dissidents in the heart of Europe before. I'm going to say this once again, as I've said before. Zelensky should literally ring up China. He should ring up China and just be like, dude, please help us. Look, I know we have been a proxy for America by your estimations, but honestly, it's time, big dog. It's time.
Ceasefire in London today. Late last night, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff pulled out of a meeting organised by the Foreign Secretary. The reasons aren't clear. The upshot, though, embarrassment for Whitehall and the perceived sidelining of European governments by the US.
I said, listen, maybe the Blue and Out guys are right and he's gay for Poodler. I don't even know anymore, man, because honestly, I don't know. Like, what is this, man? What is this tweet, dude? What is this? I am not happy with the Russian strikes on Kiev. Not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop! Are you in a gay relationship with Vladimir Putin? Like, what the hell? What is happening, dude? Vladimir, stop! Is crazy. Were you hacked? Stop. This isn't you. This isn't you, Vladipoo. I don't understand. Like, he just got real excited to post this. Like, and thought that this wouldn't look awful. No aura. No aura. No motion. Trump has no motion. All right, let's hear what the question and answer segment looked like for the live stream.
It would have never happened if I were president. Zero chance it was going to. And it didn't. You know, people say, how do you know that? Number one, it didn't happen. We never even discussed it. I would talk to Putin about it. It was the apple of his eye. You know, Ukraine was the apple of Putin's eye. But there was never even a thought that he'd go.
I will admit, I do think it's funny that he just like laid all the cards on the table and just kept glazing Putin, and in the most ridiculous way possible, attacking Zelensky. Disney, he's got no motion, he's got no cards. And then Vladipoo turned around and basically was like, yeah, you don't have the cards either, dumbass. Fantastic. Very cool, sir. Very cool. That was brilliant statesmanship. My point is, Donald Trump, I think he thought that Putin actually likes him and respects him and isn't just like playing a role where he gives him what he says what Donald Trump wants to hear and is easily manipulated. And this is precisely what's going on. He got manipulated. He thought, oh, well, Vladipoo likes me and Disney, I hate him. He's woke. He's woke, folks. It's DEI. Ukraine's got DEI policies. We must stop it. And then he took it seriously. And lo and behold, look at that. He basically gave everything to Vladipoo. Everything. And I mean everything. He gave him more than I thought he would give him. And also the mineral extraction / security cooperation agreement where Russia and America basically take on all of the remaining natural resources that Ukraine has for profit, which is a ridiculous deal. And all of that was not enough, it seems, because while this ceasefire negotiation has taken place, what ends up happening is Vladimir Putin last night bombs Kyiv, which is insane. Basically saying, I hold the cards, okay? It's not Zelensky that holds the cards, and it's not Trump that holds the cards. I hold the cards. Recognizing that Trump is in a dangerous position, or rather a politically tumultuous position, considering that he ran on ending the war, and the only way to do that is by getting Vladimir Putin to agree to end his invasion and his bombing campaign. He is taking advantage of the way that Donald Trump has foolishly presented this argument. The problem is you are basically anti-Trump, so everything you say is going to come off from this perspective, no matter what he does. I think you haven't been in here long enough, because even on accident, if Donald Trump ends up arriving at the correct position on foreign policy, and it does happen sometimes, ironically enough, I do give him credit. I don't care who is doing these decisions. I famously, in his first term, praised his handling of Korea. You just proved what I said? Wait, no. What? I thought you just said peace talks were over and Putin fooled Trump, or is that just wishful thinking? No. I mean, if you don't understand that this is Vladimir Putin basically flexing that he has all the cards here, I don't know what to tell you. There is a ceasefire agreement on the table that literally gives Vladimir Putin everything he wants. Everything. This is the best deal that Vladimir Putin could have gotten out of this process, beyond basically full-blown annexation and recognition of the entirety of Ukraine being under the Russian Federation. Like, This is the one thing that he did not do. And in the process, he kept yelling at our proxy, Zelensky, undermining his position over and over and over again at the behest of Russia, giving Russia an upper hand in these negotiations. Yeah, I said during the Gaza ceasefire, for example, that although I believe that there is a nefarious purpose with the ceasefire, it's good to offer a moment of respite to the Palestinians, for example. Like the Donald Trump administration showed that the Biden administration's incompetence was great, that they just simply couldn't make a phone call to shut this up, to shut Israel up. I wish October 7 never happened to begin with. Ukraine would be in a better position. No, it wouldn't. Ukraine's issues against Russia isn't a lack of equipment. I mean, that's part of it. To say that it's not just a lack of equipment would be false. But Ukraine's issues against mounting a strong defense against Russian incursion into further and further Ukrainian territory is a lack of manpower. It's not just that like America shifted its attention and priorities over to defending Israel's genocide. That's just marketing. The real, like, I would say this entire process fell apart in the spring counteroffensive. When the spring counteroffensive was propped up as the most successful counteroffensive that was going to finally strike a blow and push back Russia from at least some of the territories, and it yielded no positive results, that's when this was packed up. I feel like that was when it was, that was the death blow.
But do you still agree that Ukraine have to give some territory away to win peace?
Well, it depends what territory. They've been fighting. They've lost a lot of territory. And we'll do the best we can. Working with Ukraine, we'll do the best we can. But they lost a lot of territory. When you say Crimea, that was handed over during a president named Barack Hussein Obama. That had nothing to do with me, Crimea. That was 11 years ago with Obama. And they made a decision. There was an
I love that he talks about American foreign policy as though it's not like a continuation, one administration after the other, but instead exclusively the fault of individual administrations that are not him. He is infallible, and it's actually Barack Obama that f***ed up, and then it's Joe Biden that f***ed up, and he's actually trying to fix those problems. People do eat this shit. By the way, they 100% believe him when he says stuff like that. In the eyes of his sycophantic cult, this is the most defensible position, even though everything he has done so far is, utterly indefensible. If it was Joe Biden behaving like this, Republicans would be losing their goddamn minds over it.
What concessions has Russia offered up thus far to get to the point where you're closer to peace?
stopping the war, stopping taking the whole country. Pretty big.
This right here is quite literally just an admission of total defeat. He's basically saying, "Oh, if we don't get Vladimir Putin to stop stop bombing Ukraine, he's just gonna take the entire country." That's art of the deal, baby. Art of the deal. America's on its no motion arc. We have officially reached the era of major aura loss, no motion. We get no bitches. Our weed is no longer stinky. It is no longer loud. Our weed is quiet. It is crazy, dude. Has Ukraine ever reached out to non-NATO Eastern European countries that have a similar relationship with Russia at the moment, like Georgia, to join the war in solidarity? I'm not pro-war, but there's no ceasefire armistice. Ukraine will have needed boots on the ground helping them. Are they just cooked? As far as Ukraine goes, I've said this before. There are a couple options on the table. Either you take the shittiest deal of all time, led by Donald Trump, the deal maker of all time, where you basically sell off your natural resources and allow Russia to permanently annex Eastern Ukrainian territories, which is what I suspect is the, I guess, in all of the options of all time, this is the best possible option that is in front of Ukraine, right? This is the one that at least the Trump administration is putting forward. The other options in terms of like continuing the war are as follows. One, Ukraine says no to this deal. America removes its support for Ukraine. European allies try to make up for the demand in weapons. It's not going to work. And in that process, they lose out even more territory because they don't have a standing military that can withstand further Russian incursion. Now, if that's what's going to happen, there's a couple different things that the European partners could do. One, Ukraine lowers the age of conscription from, as they did, from 27 to 25. They lower it even further to 18, basically eroding its future, destroying its future in its entirety, right? They lower the conscription to 18, more forcible conscriptions take place. There's already a lot of issues with deserters and corruption in the front lines. And on top of that, Ukraine will go to the United States of America and also Europe to forcibly deport Ukrainian men, like able-bodied Ukrainian men that could be serving in the Ukrainian defense. And they ship them off back to Ukraine by force using ICE or their internal immigration enforcement agencies, and they ship them back to Ukraine and force them to fight. Or there is another nuclear option, and none of these, by the way, are guaranteed to deliver any sort of emancipatory victory for the Ukrainian state. Another option is to disband NATO so that there is no, or I guess like maybe revoke Article 5. I don't know if you can even do that. If the European states actually wanted to truly defend Ukraine, they would need to send their own personal military to Ukraine. But as it stands, they can't send their personal military to Ukraine. There's many issues with that to begin with. There's not a lot of troops. There's not a lot of combat readiness for a lot of European countries in general. But like Ukraine needs manpower, right? They need manpower. You say, what about mercenaries? Well, they have already done that. There's a foreign legion, right? A lot of people have volunteered to go and fight in Ukraine. It's not enough. Clearly, that's not enough. What would need to happen in this process is basically like standing militaries and special forces from European countries to go and fight at the behest of Ukraine to defend to push back Russia from Ukraine, to deliver a striking blow, to deliver an actual blow to Russia that says Russia has, to force Russia to concede, okay, to change the dynamic of the battlefield as it currently stands. Now, that is also complicated. Part of the reason why it's complicated is because that opens up Russia to attacking European infrastructure, to opens up Russia into directly going to war with a lot of these European nations. And as it stands, while Russia being a nuclear nation, as it stands, Russia does engage in nuclear brinksmanship. And also on top of that, given that these are NATO nations, currently, Article 5 would be triggered if there are direct American or European NATO nation troops inside of Ukraine fighting against Russian troops. So that's why I said the other option in this circumstance would be to, like, I guess, revoke Article 5 or to disband NATO and then send European troops into Ukraine to defend Ukraine, to push back Russia. So that's the situation on the ground. And any number of different analysts that tell you, like, no, drone warfare changes the dynamic greatly, or, we just need one final push. Those guys have been saying that. Those guys have been saying that since day one. But unfortunately, the situation on the ground, the situation on the front lines is very different than the way it's being presented by these analysts who don't have anything to lose in this process and might even stand to gain if they are, I don't know, directly doing propaganda for the military-industrial complex. It's cooked. It's totally cooked. If you don't make up for a lack of manpower on the Ukrainian side, you just can't do anything about it. And that requires a tremendous amount of hardship with no real guarantees of permanent security for Ukraine. And I don't even know if a lot of Ukrainians have appetite for this continued battle. And I'm not just talking about the NGO people that you hear from that don't have to serve in the military, and their job is to literally tell you over and over again, no, Ukrainians have tremendous appetite to continue the war, and we just want to do it. When obviously the front lines reflect a very different reality, because like you get to hear from some of the people that are complaining, and you get to see some of the images out of Ukraine in Western Ukraine where people are like evading the draft to the best of their ability because they don't want to go into the front lines. They don't want to get killed. So don't listen. Like, yeah, if you listen to the Atlantic Council back people, like, yeah, of course they're like, no, they want to keep fighting. They have so much appetite for fighting. And anyone that tells you like Ukraine is experiencing like desertions or corruption in the front lines is lying to you. They're like a paid Russian operative or whatever. Yeah, there's their job. They don't have to serve. They have exemption. So they get to make this argument to the West, presenting a false reality and deluding them into thinking that there is still, without making severe changes, there's still a way out of this through fighting.